Hello everyone, welcome to the Skill Exchange program. I'm Giuseppe. I'm going to be talking to you about Adobe's real-time customer data platform with collaboration. Jumping into it, a little bit about me, and you can scan the little QR code in the corner to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Giuseppe. I'm the client investment lead here at Wavemaker, a WPP media brand, and I help out clients like Adobe bring their dollars into the media space to deliver on brand KPIs and their goals. The last 5 years, I've been heavily specialized in the CTV space, really focusing on the tech management of the entire media buy, the different targeting solutions that come with that, and then the measurement opportunities provided. So over the past 10 years, I've worked on a lot of different verticals, crossing CPG, retail, auto, and lately tech with Adobe. So let's just jump into it and I'll tell you a little bit about what we have in store for today. Okay, jumping into the agenda for today, we're going to first talk about the value of a data clean room. If you're not familiar with what a data clean room can provide, we just want to overall showcase the landscape and what they are from a fundamentals. Then jumping into the specifics of Adobe's real-time CDP platform and their data clean room opportunities there. Then third, touching on ways we at Wavemaker utilize the real-time CDP in collaboration for Adobe and really jump into a couple use cases of how we've looked at it across a couple different products of theirs. And then lastly, touching on a case study and leaving it with some key takeaways for y'all to go back to your Adobe teams with. So jumping into the value of a data clean room, living in a world where finding, growing, and measuring impacts of audiences is harder than ever, we want to find ways to help brands steward the changing landscapes, and first touching on signal loss. Whether the cookies become fully deprecated or not, it's continuing to become more fragmented and making advertisers' decisions harder in terms of what data is right for them. So clean rooms definitely provide a solution for that. And we want to do that in a data privacy way. So the importance of stewarding the trust of our clients with their first party data. We spend a lot of time capturing this first party data, and we don't want to be seen as someone who doesn't manage it in a thoughtful and caring way to ensure it's not leaked, and we hold their privacy to utmost accountability. Then last, complex tech. Tech at times can seem and be sold as pretty streamlined and straightforward, but when actuality of activating, it can become very challenging, nuanced, and require multiple different solutions from different teams. So, starting things off with the data clean room promise. You want to unlock targeting, measurements, and insights, and all that starts with your advertiser and your data. So you've spent a lot of time collecting different first-party data signals, whether that be emails, phone numbers, addresses, and so forth, and managing that within your DMP. And you want to activate that with the publisher, where they have their first-party data and being enriched in a data clean room environment. This can be done so typically through a scoping agreement between you, the advertiser, and the publisher, as you both onboard your data within a clean room instance to gain customer insights. And we're going to be learning about who your audience is and how you can reach them from a standard media activation, as well as understanding who they might be on the publisher end, and think about whether there might be sponsorship opportunities or custom activations that you yourself want to explore, or different marketing teams within your organizations would like to explore. Then we talk about marketing measurement, enriching your measurement framework with first-party data from your campaign activations and potentially, first-party data from your publishers. Then thirdly, jumping into audience analysis and creation. So as you're building out these audiences, you can analyze their overlap, as well as maybe where they might index well against publisher data. And then lastly, touching on your customer journey. I don't know how your organization is built out, but typically there's different media that's being spent towards brand goals versus performance goals. And through this customer journey analysis, you might see how brand, it really drives a lot of those performance and lower funnel KPIs through maybe some incrementality learnings or multi-touch learnings. And we want to do this all through a privacy-centric way, through data obfuscation. We want to control that data movement in one siloed environment to protect all your data assets as they're being pushed and pulled in different ways and cut and spliced to your likings. So jumping in, how does Adobe Real-Time CDP and Collaboration work? You have your brand data, as we talked about earlier, and then the publisher data. And you both have instances set up with Real-Time CDP, which provides you access to data cleanroom and cloud storage. And then within collaboration, our three pillars we really like to touch on is the discover, activate, and measurement. And all these sub boxes kind of really fill within that, in terms of audience planning, overlap insights, audience expansions, secure activations, and campaign performance, where you or your agency partners can really lean in and gain those learnings because you'll all have access to collaboration in your seat. So jumping into it, empowering your media teams to engage with collaboration, agency teams can discover new audiences and seamlessly activate across partners, where you can work with your Adobe account team to turn, measurement solutions and capabilities that feel right for your brand in terms of incremental frameworks. So first, discover. As you can see, there's some huge publishers on this slide, looking at Roku, NBCU, Warner Brothers, and you can then instantly set up within Collaboration CDP an instance with one of these partners, along with many more, or to understand those overlap analysis, and we'll dive into that more. Then you can push it over to activate it. And then lastly, touching on measurement in terms of you have a bunch of data that sits in within AAP, which might also entail both online and offline measurement that most frameworks might not entail for, as well as incrementality that you'll also have within measurement capabilities. As I mentioned earlier, Adobe is a beta and alpha partner for collaboration, so some of these tools might not be available in your instance just yet, but I would talk to your different Adobe account teams to figure out when that will be available to you and how you can fold that into your existing frameworks. So how do we at Wavemaker use a real-time data platform with collaboration? Let's dive into it. First, discover. Dive into your first-party data and instantly see their match size of your audiences across the publishers. So as you can see in the chart on the left, we're looking at two different Adobe audiences here for our Lightroom product. One was a propensity audience that we set up and built within Adobe's DMP that then we pushed over to collaboration. And as you can see, it doesn't overlap at all with our existing Lightroom subscribers. So where's the opportunity here? You definitely want to lean into this propensity audience, and knowing that it's not overlapping with our current Lightroom subscriber audience is all green lights to move forward there. But then Lightroom subscriber audience, that's a really powerful data segment. These are people who are actively utilizing our product and paying for it. How can we, build opportunities with them? Well, we can simply build out a lookalike audience within collaboration, or B, we can push that Lightroom subscriber audience to a partner like NBCU, and then have them build a lookalike for us, or tell us what sort of different audiences highly match against our Lightroom subscribers. So as you look to the chart on the right, this is an example of the propensity audience. As you can see, there's a pretty decent overlap of identities between our data and TV Tube's data, where we have a 30% overlap. And then also we're able to see that there's a high propensity of our Lightroom propensity audiences, sorry for the double dip there, are against college grads. So that's one way we can think about it. I think a really relatable example is for one of our recent upcoming campaigns we're looking at with Adobe is we were exploring an Adobe audience with NBCU, and we noticed that it highly indexed against comedies. So in terms of comedies, we pulled a subset of that audience and saw was there any specific audience or comedies that highly indexed, and we saw that the show The Office highly indexed against this audience. So we looked at different media activations with The Office, as well as, I don't know if any of you guys have seen, The Office is coming up with a new show, or the show writer of The Office, Greg Daniels, is coming up with a new show called The Paper, or where we saw a huge opportunity in terms of sponsorships, as well as exploring custom content integrations with that program to really have a robust opportunity to reach our audience that is very well leaned in a high profile format. So it's not just for seamless activation, as well as it can create white space for sponsorships, custom content, and contextual targeting. So jumping into Activate, this is a big opportunity since it's not always easy to get your first party data to a publisher in a trusted way. Adobe's CDP platform really seamlessly provides an opportunity for you to push your first party data to a publisher all within one space. You don't have to worry about your campaign being delayed through bringing in a third party or having to bring in another tech platform that has a match rate that maybe not be the same place where your first party data is stored, and it just creates complications. This is seamlessly integrated because it's all staying within the Adobe Experience Cloud platform, or for targeting, building lookalikes, and suppressing your audience for personalized CTV, and then pushing it directly to that publisher. Then jumping into measurement, we always believe in leaning into your existing measurement framework. We're not going to come here and tell you that collaboration should override any sort of existing framework you have. We at Adobe, we utilize quite a few different data partners and measurement capabilities, such as iSpot for overlap analysis, frequency analysis, as well as conversion data. Then we utilize Disco for ad measurement and brand tracking, as well as our different ad servers and measurement. So we have our existing framework set up where we understand where our ads are going and how our existing framework is driving brand growth and brand health. Where collaboration comes in is it provides additional opportunities for you to pull on offline measurement data, online measurement data that might not be existent in your regular framework, as well as incrementality through AEP to enrich your framework, to allow you to have more deep conversations with your measurement teams and your finance teams to showcase the power of your advertising and how it's stewarding the brand. So how do we learn from these results? Well, let's jump into it. Through initial tests with collaboration, we've seen the power of our first party data. One of our biggest partnerships to date was with NBCU, where we looked at 2 different Photoshop audiences, and we looked at existing Photoshop subscribers, and then built a lookalike on them, and then people who purchases other Adobe products but have yet to purchase Photoshop. And we're able to set this up and test it against other, data from NBCU, which we've historically been buying, as well as a lot of other different CTV providers. And what we noticed was through enriching our campaign with this first party data, we saw increases in aided awareness, increases in consideration, and lastly, the increases in perception of our product. So we drove all the different brand impact pillars that we would like to see with this campaign. And then How did it perform versus the baseline? NBCU performed 25% higher in terms of driving site traffic than the baseline, showcasing the power of this data. Since we were able to tag it individually, we were able to get individual audience insights. We were able to get individual perception insights. The perception ones are a little bit more challenging, and we might not have that stat sig on every different targeting detail, but we were able to holistically see the stat sig of NBCU versus other partners, as well as seeing the conversion insights at the different line item levels. So overall, showcasing strong results for our brand. Then lastly, jumping into the key takeaways, Adobe's collaboration solution interface allows for brands to understand, like we talked about, the audience overlap and the opportunities that are created there from not just an activation standpoint, but also from providing custom activations to enriching insights to share with your different marketing teams. The scale against different publishers, whether that be, like we talked about, an NBCU or maybe a Roku, and looking at TV interfaces, as well as we didn't talk about this too much, but it can also be pushed to your different programmatic platforms such as ADSP, as well as social platforms. So if you want to activate on Meta, this data is able to be ported there as well without having to set up another instance. And how that audiences indexed against partners can drive strong brand results for your media executions. And one key takeaway here would be, as you want to lean in, and if you find this content really insightful, that you should jump in, have the conversations with your Adobe account team, and highlight which partners you'd like to test first, since there is a legal scoping agreement required for that data sharing. Then second, collaboration allows brands to seamlessly activate that first-party data, like we've talked about, for precise targeting and lookalike modeling. And I can't tell you enough, like the flexibility of being able to build out lookalikes within the platform, or maybe you don't have enough time or the bandwidth, you can push that directly to your publisher partners, and they can build out those lookalikes for you, and that's all lives within collaboration, and it can be seamlessly activated upon, which is a nice feature of theirs. And then lastly, in terms of measurement, depending on your vertical and depending on your brand, like offline measurement might be the key driver of success for you. And you have all that sitting, within AEP, being able to match that back is a huge unlock. Or maybe match back online measurement to incrementality or frequency management. Like there's tons of white spaces that this can unlock, that we definitely think it's worth having conversations with your internal measurement team, as well as the Adobe account team, to figure out how to get this set up for you to best enrich your media buys and showcase success, especially because a lot of this CTV space has not been as measurable as we'd like in the past. There's been a lot of limitations, and we really find opportunities here with collaboration and CDP to providing those unlocks in these emerging spaces as they continue to grow. Then last but not least, jumping in for any Q&As that you all would have.